Hi, I'm Paco Nathan with O'Reilly Media, and we're here at the O'Reilly Artificial Intelligence Conference in New York City. And today, it's a pleasure to be joined by Kurt Muehmel, who's VP of Sales Engineering at Dataiku.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Paco. Nice to be sitting with you.
Great to be talking with you.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed your keynote this morning.
Oh, thanks.
That's fantastic.
It's such an important topic. I'm just really happy to be able to lend my voice to it. It's something that we should all be thinking about.
Certainly. I especially like there was a lot of great examples, and it was like fast cuts, this is what is important.
Yeah, we feel that it's really something that should be top of mind. Even if the objective of business is not necessarily to make a positive impact on the world, right? We're businesses looking to make money, and that's fine.
Sure.
But I think that we do have a responsibility to at least avoid harm where we can, right? And I think that's something that we should be conscious of. Especially
in this kind of work with AI, where there is so much potential for impact.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's this huge lever on human potential,
right.
And like any technology, right? That's the case. So it means that you can either be having great positive impact, and that's where we start talking about value and ROI, right. Or of course positive societal benefits as well, which are non-negligible, or you can run the risk of having potentially severe negative impact as well. I saw one of the other speakers this morning mentioning that it's like a very sharp knife. Either it's something that you can use to prepare a wonderful dinner, or of course it could be a terrible weapon if it's in the wrong hands, or if you're not careful with it. And that's the thing. It's not necessarily about intentionally trying to cause harm, but it's through, I guess, neglect is maybe even, negligence or carelessness is maybe even too strong. It's often just not thinking about it.
Unintended.
Exactly, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, about ROI, why is calculating ROI for data or AI projects, why is that difficult? And really, what's the best place to start on that?
Sure. Well, so why is calculating ROI difficult? And this is something that we've seen with a lot of different customers, right? On the one hand, of course, when we're looking to sell our software, we're hoping to explain that it will have a positive ROI. When customers are using our software, they're often looking to explain the benefit of not just our software, but the initiative around ML or AI more broadly. But the challenge is that data and the application of it through AI, ML, is so broad, so pervasive, that it's really difficult to separate out, exactly what is the specific benefit of this one technology versus another. We don't have a lot of controlled experiments. Within the context of your model development, you might be doing some A/B testing and so on, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. It's almost like trying to calculate the benefit of, what's now become pervasive technology, electricity, things like that. It's just so embedded in every single process that it's difficult to pull that away. And so I think that's a common challenge, that we're looking to put one single number on the dollar value of AI, and I don't think that's the right approach. If companies are looking to get started on it, generally what we do recommend is that they do try to start small, not quantify the entire impact, but let's start by quantifying a few impacts, and those can be across a number of different metrics, be it time saved, improvements to various processes. That's much more attainable, much more tractable as a problem than saying what is the value of this overall to our entire organization. Most people are convinced that there is value. The question is really how much. And I don't know that we'll ever get to that full accounting of it, exactly what is this, the value of this, because again, like the lights in this room, how do we quantify the benefit of that? But at least by starting little by little, we can help one another understand why we're doing this, what's worth spending on, and where that investment should go.
It's relatively early, or it seems relatively early in the game. I mean, perhaps years from now, we'll have a much deeper bench of case studies which can help quantify.
An interesting observation from one of our, in this case, a prospect, a company who we were speaking with, was they were wondering, at what point does data, go on the books as an asset?
Right.
And following GAAP rules, this is what your data is valued at, and here's how we assess this, and right or wrong, at least there could be an agreed upon framework for comparing these assets, and that's of course what we see with various accounting principles, right? It's not the single truth, but it is comparable across companies, and perhaps that could be an interesting avenue for the future as well.
Very good. So what are some of the most important factors to consider in this kind of ROI calculation So, for instance, are there hidden costs or opportunities that organizations forget to include when they're trying to assess this?
Yeah, I think so, right? Because once again, as we were discussing at the beginning, there are risks to doing this, right? So reputational risks and so on. Also compliance. GDPR in Europe obviously is top of mind for many of us. If you read the opinion section in the major newspapers in the United States, you do see some calls for something similar in the United States. Right?
California, it's already gone through legislature.
Exactly.
It's coming in next year.
So, at what point does that become nationwide? Or often I guess car emissions are another example. California leads on that, and the industry has to follow. Right? Are we going to see something similar like that? So those compliance questions become increasingly important. And so when you are doing this accounting or attempting to, you don't want to play down the potential risks and downsides and the costs associated with it as well. And that's one of our recommendations as well, typically, is that we don't encourage people to overestimate. Because once again, we don't want to end up in a situation of inflated expectations. Right. You've been in the ML field for some time,
definitely.
right?
We've seen this a few times.
That, right? Exactly. Here it comes. It's now. Maybe right now there actually is. We are really seeing some really interesting applications now. So it now is different, but we don't want to overdo it as well. So in terms of some of the opportunities for doing this. I think a lot of the opportunity is really internal to the companies that are doing this, to be able to both explain up and sideways and down in all directions within the organization why we're doing this. Because of course, up it might be interested in are we actually getting money back on our investment, but sideways and down throughout the organization, it helps to bring people on board to understand why this technology is coming in now. It's meant to be disruptive, which means that we need to get people on board to understand why we're necessarily changing things, even when it may mean that hopefully their job is not going away, but it may be changing or being augmented or assisted in different ways as well.
I've heard mention of how ML models, to some extent, are kind of a proxy for the data that's behind them. So sort of a generalization of the data. But in the same way, they're also somewhat of a proxy for the organizational learnings. And so as you can build more and more models that you're using in your business process, then you've got this kind of lens on your own internal collected knowledge.
That's right. And that's one of the beautiful potentials of these applications as well, is can we take the best of the company and codify it in a way that could then be applied automatically to new situations, and perhaps even with even better performance than what the human part of the organization would be able to achieve. Now that's a great potential, but at the same time, right, we need to make sure that the individuals who are going to be impacted by that, that there is due consideration given to them as well. But once again, with these technologies, which are generally creating value, it's going to change jobs. Some jobs may indeed go away. We should not say that will never happen. But what we should work to ensure is that, as with previous technological transitions, that there are new opportunities being created as a result for everybody to participate in the value that's being created.
We'll dig into that a bit more. Besides ROI, besides showing that, what can organizations do to demonstrate the value of their initiatives in AI?
Well, so I think they can break this down along a number of different metrics. There's the pure business value around what is it, how have we improved whatever top line, bottom line, wherever that's going to hit, and we can list through the different ways that you can generate more revenue or save costs or both at the same time through the different applications.
But those are goals; they're usually well stated,
right? Whereas I think the other value, right, can sometimes be maybe one step removed, still on the business side, but about positioning and sustainability of the company. And I mean sustainability in the broad sense, not just in the the environmental sense, which is another topic also important.
Competitive sustainability.
Exactly right. How are we going to continue as a going affair in this ever-changing world? And I think that's one of the key values, where the investment early on can pay dividends for years and decades to come, because certainly the world around us is not slowing down, and that competitive landscape is only getting hotter and hotter every day.
Ben Lorca was talking this morning about some of the surveys we've done, and the most important takeaway that we've had from those is how much that gap is widening between the companies that are investing in AI initiatives and the ones who just aren't even getting started yet.
Exactly, and it seems like we used to talk about every year that you delay the investment in the initiatives, now it feels like every quarter.
And some of the transformation work that you must do, even as table stakes, can take years in a large organization before you can get to the point of changing things.
No, and that's, we at Dataiku, we're a software vendor, right? Yeah, we have our technology, but a lot of the questions that we get in the context of these broader discussions about using our technology are really organizational questions, and transformation questions about who should be doing what, how should the organization be structured, what should the approval process be for example, obtaining new data to train a model on, which is then deployed into production under which process? Well, there's not necessarily a standard response to that. We're doing our best to help with that. We've been thinking about the problem for some time, but I think this is an area where we're going to see a lot of progress, both on the technology, but on the organizational side as well.
Well, that's a great proof point, though, is as a vendor coming in, if you can solve the problems from the software side and start to bring to fore the organizational challenges, that's an excellent proof point about the value of the software.
Well, yeah, and that's really what it's the good vision of the founders was that essentially the previous or the prior traditional ways of working, where generally a single tool set was given to a single population, for us in certain structured context that works very well, and you have best of breed software for this population and best of breed software for that population, but really, and especially in the ML and AI context, that really results in some big challenges when you're trying to have this very fast-moving, iterative development cycle that necessarily, or at least hopefully, is involving people from across the organization, which is really the core vision that went into building this this product that we have now today, which really does bring all those people together throughout the entire life cycle of a project.
Fantastic. What are some of the best practices then when you're creating an ROI model using these tools?
Yeah.
What's the practice side of it?
I mentioned the first one, but I'll mention it again because it's really important. Don't don't inflate the numbers, right?
Okay.
We've all done it. Personal budgets, a couple of cells in Excel, and hey, look, I'm a millionaire.
Right.
It's easy to add zeros. Don't do that. But then, I think that you need to spend a lot of time ground truthing the ROI model as well. The same way that you would a predictive model, right?
Sure.
Or an unsupervised learning model, right? Does this actually make sense? And taking that out to the people within the organization, on the business side, maybe even on the finance side, to ask them, this is what the way that we're accounting for the model itself, or the value of these initiatives. Does that make sense to you? And then the third recommendation would be to use tools, to use platforms that do allow you to centralize some of this work, because again, a lot of the challenges in this field today is that a lot of the effort is dispersed within the organization, and so if there is an initiative to bring that together, that also pays dividends on the accounting side as well, where now we have a full understanding of all of the activity, all of the initiatives, the status of all the projects, how many models are running in production, how many have been updated over time, all of these that could be at least useful proxy metrics for value, at least now in the organizations that have centralized on a common platform. In full disclosure, that's the sort of platform that we provide, right? But it does, in addition to the governance benefits and so on, there is this accounting benefit, and that's also something that we've seen from our customers, and actually something that we're developing as well, a sort of a value scorecard to assist our customers in assessing what is the value that they're getting specifically out of the use of our platform, and obviously that's for selfish purposes, but that's something that we have found has been very appreciated, because at least that's one part of this this bigger equation.
Excellent. Well, the ground truth, it brings to mind that a lot of what we do is, A/B testing, multi-arm bandits or whatever, but just proving out models. So
that's right.
We're really kind of drinking the Kool-Aid here.
Of course we should, right? Typically, right, the first go at it isn't the best one. So we should be ready to iterate on that. At some point we have to stabilize, because again, with accounting models, you don't want the measure changing every year, because then it's not comparable over time. But at least at the beginning of the initiative, think big, think wide, collect different opinions before settling on one model.
Now, what if there's not a lot of historical data in a particular organization?
Yeah.
How do you determine and predict ROI or recommendations for what you're doing there?
Well, that's the case almost in most companies, right?
Okay.
Most companies, they're getting into the ML, the AI field, and they're testing out new approaches. So there's not a lot of historical data to work from, but it also does create an interesting opportunity to use pilots, proofs of concept, proofs of value, to establish initial benchmarks for what is the current process without the application of these new methods on top of it, versus afterwards, now that we have implemented this, how is that improved? That's usually as close as you can get to a controlled, properly controlled experiment within a large organization, right?
So is that like checkpoints and then iterate toward them, or?
So that's definitely a part of it, right? Okay. Because you don't want to go in and roll out a multi-year initiative for AI and ML across the organization, and then look backwards and say, what was that worth? You want to be anticipating that from the beginning to be able to take your measurements along the way of the actual impact that this is having on the business, which can then allow you to calculate that value. Because, of course, as these initiatives become more pervasive, more complex, they're going to have influence on one another, and it's going to be more and more difficult to tease out the actual benefit and value that these techniques are bringing.
Also, that kind of information, who should that be shared with inside of an organization?
So again, I think that it needs to be taken up the chain, right? Because often, and I was just in a discussion down on the expo floor right now about this, but often there's a misunderstanding or a mischaracterization, often in the C-suite, of what the value of these initiatives are. In some cases, it's just a bunch of geeks playing around, and in other cases, it's the be-all, end-all savior of the world. It's neither, right? It's something in between, right? It's hard work done by intelligent people that's going to have positive benefits, but it's not necessarily going to change everything, certainly if we don't apply it appropriately. So we need to be taking this discussion, and especially in economic terms, upwards, because very naturally, the leaders of these organizations have a responsibility to look after the financial aspects. They definitely need to be aware of that, and then everyone else who's going to be involved in this process also benefits from being involved in this reporting as well, so that they know that what they're contributing to and why it's valuable. So it's not just about showing off and saying here's all the the additional revenue or cost savings that we've done, but really helping the entire organization understand in a common language. So ultimately, money, economics, it's a common currency. We all understand what that means for the business. It's a good way to translate what it is that we're doing, which unfortunately is sometimes a little bit opaque to our colleagues.
Sure, I can imagine. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you.
Michael,
really appreciate it today.
Yeah, it was really a pleasure. I appreciate it. Thanks.